Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Cheech and my co-host Manny, and we are going to do our part two of Rush on 2112 today. And I just like to say a couple things, couple shout outs. Thank you to all our friends and family who liked the first episode and wrote comments. Thank you to my good friend Jay who reposted it. That was fantastic. And this whole show, I'm gonna dedicate to my late uncle Anthony, who passed away in March, who was a big influence on my life, and he took me and my best friend Danny Brown to our first Rush concert.
Wow.
Power Windows, 1986. A band called Marillion opened up, so you should check those guys out too. So
Dude, dude,
what's going
amazing.
on, Manny? So you're back from jet setting.
Yeah, man. Dealing with jet lag right now, back in good old
Yeah.
Greenwich, Connecticut. So I'm back
All
home,
right.
and I must say, I've
Nice.
binge listening 2112. I think like since I was in Salt Lake, I listened to the album
Wow.
at least 10 times.
Fantastic.
And I gotta admit, each listen, man, you discover something new.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like I think it was
I
on
was listening.
go.
I'm sorry.
Now go ahead, Cheech.
I was listening to the opposite side of 2112. I was listening to
I
the other
was
song, like
ju-
the Twilight Zone.
I was just
Uh,
gonna say, dude, those three tracks, if Rush
like
just released those three tracks, dude, man, you know what song I've been loving Passage to Bangkok?
yes, yep.
So
Which is about
fantastic.
the noble weed that was being smoked. It's basically about weed.
Oh, see, I
I
didn't
guess
even know that.
Rush might have smoked. They might have smoked a lot. Back in their day.
That is
But
so I didn't even know that. That's funny.
and then there's the beautiful Tears, which is like
Oh,
could be a soft
dude,
rock song, could be like it's beautiful.
dude. And if I can add one more song too, there's a song called that it sounds kind of like a Steely Dan jazzy number.
Oh,
It's in
uh
I'll tell you right now. I
something for nothing,
the
lesson.
Twilight Zone.
Yeah, yeah, Twilight Zone, yeah.
Fantastic. Jad is it's those three, like, yeah, there's on the I guess it would be side two, right, Cheese? Like on the vinyl. Yeah, it would be side two.
Yeah, it's on
Yeah,
it's on side two.
Passage to Bangkok, The Twilight Zone,
Hmm.
Lessons, Tears, Something for Nothing. If Rush just released those tracks, this album still would have been
Oh
awesome.
yeah, yeah.
But I guess center
Oh,
stage
definitely, man.
and what we're going to be talking about today, uh, I don't know if you want to call it Magnus Opus, but 2112, a 21-minute progressive rock
Yes.
song, and it is probably what
Oh,
2112 is known for.
yes. Oh yeah. I mean, there was a lot of great prog concept albums in the 70s. Pink Floyd was the kings of it, putting out those
If
concept albums like
I
The
was going to
Wall and
say,
all that.
if I can add, I think three
Yeah.
concept albums, and again, these were the progressive rock bands that were taking rock to like new heights of like artistry. Um,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Genesis Foxtrot, which I shared a song from you, high concept
Yes.
album. Yes's Close to
Amazing.
Pitch, and Pink
Yep.
Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. I think these three
Yep.
albums must listen if you want to get a sense of the concept
Hmm.
proggy rock sound. That
And I'm
Rush,
gonna throw in one
go ahead.
more by Yes. I don't mean to cut you off. Tales of Topographic Oceans,
Mhm.
which is like
That's
it's phenomenal. A
fantastic.
fantastic prog album.
Mhm.
Like I don't even get that. I can never figure out any Yes concepts. It's like they're all over the place. You
No, and
know.
that's what's amazing about it because there's such high level of artistry behind these concept albums that they're open
Oh
to
yeah,
interpretation. That's really cool.
yeah.
You can't say that much about music that comes out today because
No.
these rock bands were making art, and Rush in 1976 will join the pantheons. And I was gonna say I consider 2112 one of the greatest concept albums of all time. Like if I had to have a top 10,
I think it is. I think it is definitely.
it's strong. It's
And
strong type.
also the concept album made a comeback in the 80s for a lot of metal bands.
Oh
You know, a
yeah.
lot of prog
Yeah.
metal bands did great
Yeah.
concepts. The the two, I mean, Operation Mindcrime by
Okay.
Queensryche,
I was gonna say
that
yeah.
blew up in the 80s, and that brought back the concept album. And then one of my all-time favorite bands in the world, next to Rush, Fate's Warning. And I
Mm,
think I played you some Fate's Warning. They did a
good.
great concept album called No Exit, and there were and the, which is I think it's based on existentialism. John Paul Sartre. I
Mhm.
think it's based on that. So they kind of like maybe a band called Sabotage, Gutter Ballet. They kind of reinvented some of that stuff, and I think Dream Theater did that too. So these amazing proggy bands were going back to the art rock
Good
stuff,
comeback. Yeah.
which is cool, you know.
No, that's
But
really cool.
yeah, man, you know. So you want to get started with a little bit of where we left off, like Rush's
Yeah.
Down the Tubes
Yeah.
tour, and the critics not liking Caress of Steel, butchering it, and Rolling Stone hating it, and that, people not going to concerts.
Yeah.
So I guess back then they did 3 album deals, and this was like, and that's the cool thing about the industry. Like they would give you 3 chances to make it, and that goes true with like people like Bruce Springsteen. They had like they didn't make it on their first couple of albums. It
No,
took time.
no, I was gonna say just to add to that. Yeah, that's what was interesting about back then. That you get 3 chances. The record label give you a 3 record deal. So you have cases like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Bruce Springsteen, uh
Yeah,
some bands like Queen who, well, maybe not Queen, but bands that had fantastic first records, but for some odd reason were just not hitting it. And
yeah,
usually it would take usually what ends up happening, like in Bruce Springsteen, which I'm a huge fan of,
yeah,
Born to Run, he poured all his heart in. It was like an all or
yeah.
nothing album, and Rush will do something similar with 2112.
Exactly. It's a good comparison. It really is. And they all worked so hard. That era, those guys toured. They played like
Yeah.
365 shows a year.
Unheard of, dude.
It's great. It was crazy.
It's like on this work 24/7, like rock and roll 24/7. It's amazing.
And and they put out Rush, put out 2 albums in one year, like on her, and toured and did at least 100 dates. Like, how is this possible? How are
Eh,
these bands this shit?
I know it's amazing.
Unbelievable. Yeah, so let's dive right into 2112.
Mhm.
Um, so basically, I got my notes for references and stuff. Let me see.
And I will say while you're searching for your notes, yeah, so they were reacting, like you said, to the harsh critics, the
Yeah.
disappointing sales of Caress of Steel. That record
Oh
bombed.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Imagine being Rush going into the studio. Like, there had to be a lot of pressure. Like, and Alex, in an interview, someone brought it up to him recently, and he said, after the finished product, we handed it to the record label, and they had no choice but to put it out. And they didn't want, like, I know there was some record executives that knew about it, because they were like, oh yeah, 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 it's going to be more straight ahead, it's going to be like the Fly By Night, less proggy stuff. But some record executives were on Rush's side, but it was like the presidents of the companies that were, you know still like that. Some places, the
mhm.
president dictate down to the whatever, labels and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
anyway, so Rush was like, fuck you, we're doing what we want, we're taking the Ayn Rand approach, and boom, and they went in and masterpiece.
Yeah.
So I mean, we could talk about the concepts of the album.
I think
Like,
that's a good place to start. Yeah.
yeah, coming off of I mean, you want to talk a little bit about the philosophy of Ayn Rand, like just what
Yeah.
where Neil was going with this.
Yeah, yeah. Let me pull up my notes. Hold on. Yeah, so that's actually pretty significant. And they were heading into, so in a way they were gonna leave behind their early hard rock blues sound, right?
Yeah,
Kind of like that Led Zeppelin sound, and embrace progressive rock. And conceptual philosophy. And I think, as we talked about in the last episode, Neil Peart was Ayn Rand was a huge influence on him.
Yep,
And like you mentioned, the song Anthem on Fly By Night, right?
yep. Seven Night.
Anthem.
Open
That's a
back on
that
side too.
he summarizes Ayn Rand's philosophy perfectly in that song.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So
And it's
and
a great read for anyone out there who wants a a good read and and learn about Ayn Rand. Anthem is a great place to start.
wait, Cheech, did you share your story of you going to the library?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Share that
Okay,
story, man, because that's a great
all
example.
right. So when I was a youngin back in 1986, 85, when I really like, well, my first introduction to Rush, let me just say, was I got into Rush in 1976. I had an older aunt who somehow had a bunch of record collections. She didn't necessarily listen to Rush, but she inherited a bunch of records. So I'd go into her room as a young kid, 5 or 6 years old, and I put on like Boston's first album, all the Kiss, and then there was a weird album. It looked like Star Wars, and I was like, oh, this looks like Star Wars. I put it on, and you hear that craziness that in the
Yeah.
beginning, and I was hooked. I was hooked. I was like, wow. So I got into Rush. I got into 2112 when I was about 6 or 7. Um, so I didn't know anything about bass or I got to say the back of the picture kind of creeped me out when I saw them. I was like, who? Like, oh my god, who's this guy? Geddy Lee. I was like, what is this guy? So around 1985, 80, yeah, 85, I was just diving into the catalog, playing bass for about a year, and reading every book I could get on Rush. There was no internet. So I went into the library, forgot the librarian's name. And mind you, I was not in the honors class or the whatever, regents, all that. I was just like regular guy, regular class. So I go in there and I said to the librarian, "Oh, I need a couple of books." And she's like looking at me like, "Well, first of all, like, why are you here?" Like I would never, you never come in here. And I'm like, "I need a book." She's like, "Well, what do you want?" I said, "A book called Anthem." She's looking at me, and I said, "I need some poetry by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, the Kubla Khan, and I need also Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, and I want that whole thing, and I needed Edgar Allan Poe, Murder in Rue Morgue." Now, if you put that together as a metalhead, you're gonna know the Rush and Iron Maiden songs. So she looked at me like her eyes were bugging out, like what, what, So she said I could give you 3 out of the 4, but I can't give you Anthem because it's been banned from this library.
Mhm.
That in another book called Forever by Judy Blume, but I won't go there. Any readers want to check that out? It's pretty twisted. Um, so she goes, go to the public library for that. And she's like, how do you know about this stuff? What makes you want to read Ayn Rand's Anthem? That's a heavy read for a
Mhm.
15-year-old, and the Kubla Khan, is really hard to digest. I said a band called Rush, and she couldn't believe it. And I said Iron Maiden, and I blew her away that I was learning from bands. I was learning literature,
Yeah.
philosophy, art, and then she got a kick out of me, and she told her other coworkers. I made her a mixtape of Rush tunes, and she was like, "Wow, this is pretty amazing." So that's my library story. You know,
Dude, that story is so epic, dude.
I remember it like yesterday, walking in there with a Rush T-shirt on. Still trying to grow my hair out, and just in mid '80s. The Dewey Decimal System, all that crazy stuff. Before the internet, but yeah. So let's talk a little bit about I guess the concept. Or oh no, I said, did you want to talk about Ayn Rand a little bit
Yeah, just
before
just
we?
really quick. I guess Ayn Rand was a Russian philosopher. She was a woman. And like you mentioned, her famous she wrote some famous books, Anthem, The Fountainhead,
Yeah,
and Atlas Shrugged, right? So these are
yeah,
all
and those were both books. They weren't banned because you read them in high school. A lot of kids
right,
read them,
right, right.
but Anthem for some reason was banned in my high school. I don't know why.
That's interesting. That I'm not sure why, but what I will say is I know Neil Peart. I could be wrong or kind of distorting this, but he was reading The Fountainhead. Was it during the production of 2112 or during the Crest of Steel? Like I remember in the documentary, like he mentioned The
Um,
Fountainhead as well.
I'm not sure exactly.
Okay.
I know George Orwell. Got to throw in there. It's what 1984. He was,
Yeah.
which is definitely an influence on 2112. Um,
Yeah, so she was a yeah, Russian philosopher. Her philosophy is objectivism, right?
yeah,
And she described it as the concept of man as a heroic being with his own happiness as the moral purpose of his life, with productive achievement as his noblest activity, and reason as his only absolute, and was a huge advocate of free will, which will influence Rush, right?
yeah. Oh yeah.
So Neil,
That's that. That sums up her perfectly.
yep.
And I recommend any younger kids who don't know who Ayn Rand is, and you're into the whole creativity, individualism, not being a conformist.
Yeah, she
You
was.
know,
I will say she rejected religion. That's a huge thing about her. She was more the exercise of free will. So she was a
yeah,
firm believer in it.
yeah, and she, that gets a little, on the line rejected religion with some people, but so did Nietzsche. So
Yeah.
like
Yep. Yep.
philosophy, and then she all, you know, she also reminds me of Crowley a little bit in the sense
Mm,
of like do what thy wilt, like the Thelema mentality.
right.
Um, that was an interesting philosophy that Jimmy Page was heavily into Crowley's philosophy and stuff.
Yeah.
As a side, so any kind of thing where it's like be yourself, be creative, do what you want to do, as long as it's positive, obviously, and that's what I get out of Ayn Rand.
Yeah.
So,
And
so
so her kind of like and again, yeah, like you mentioned, any person that wants to read her works, highly recommend. Um, and we'll say it's interesting because she's kind of rejected by the mainstream philosophy, which I think
yeah,
we talked about this outside of that Rush, kind of similar to Rush, how they were rejected by the music industry,
yeah,
right?
yes.
They
Oh, there
were,
was a lot. They there's a lot of similarities to Ayn Rand and Rush.
mhm,
That's why Neil gravitated to her. Could even go back to even like Subdivisions, the song. It's
yeah,
about like Neil's ideas, be cool or be cast out, that kind of thing. You
mhm.
know, but yeah, definitely
And one more
huge.
thing, no, and one more thing about Rand before we she also
Yeah,
argued that the primary emphasis of man's free will is the choice to think or not to think. So like you mentioned, huge believer in free will.
yeah,
Uh and she was saying here that man can focus his mind to a full active, purposefully directed awareness of reality, or he can unfocus and let himself drift in a semi-conscious daze merely reacting to any chance stimulus, right? And when point of all this is that if your mind is closed, you will conform. So that's going to be a big
ex-
thing. Rush,
yes. Have
non-conforming, right?
have in mind. I will choose free will.
Right,
I
right.
think free will is the most important thing we have in this world. Our choice. I think we're born. We know we're born. We know we're now again philosophical, but you know you're born and you know you're gonna die. But just the one thing that you have is free will.
Hmm.
That's the other thing you have automatically.
Hmm.
Whether you're a child or not, the child has free will to, I want my bottle, I don't want my bottle, you know,
Right.
that, that kind of thing. We
Right.
won't get too crazy because we could get nuts on philosophy, me and you. So
Honestly, that could be its own episode,
this is
honestly.
about Rush. This is
Right,
about
right.
Rush. That ain't,
The point of all this like philosophy stuff is that it influenced Neil Peart.
yeah,
It
yeah.
influenced and so her philosophy is distilled in early Rush records and especially the later ones, but
Oh yeah.
especially in 2112, which I
Yeah.
think 2112 is about that, about
Uh-huh.
non-conformity and freedom from the
Yeah.
elders, right? The priests of
Yeah. The Elder
the priests
Temple
of
of
the
Searing.
Syrinx, yep,
Yeah.
and
We all
freedom
know about
represented.
those. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, and freedom represented, and she's remember you probably know. I think it's a guitar in the story, right? Our main character finds a guitar, an instrument.
Yeah. So getting into the story, uh, they, it starts off in outer space. They don't really, it's somewhere on another planet, so that's the sci-fi part of it.
Right.
And uh, they don't give the. I'm sure the guy has a name in the because it came out with a Marvel. You sent me that cool thing. Marvel Comics made 2112 a comic book
Wasn't that cool?
and Hemispheres and Farewell to King. So there are probably names to the character that I'm just not sure. If anybody knows the name of the character who finds the guitar, please let us know.
Hmm.
They don't say a name. They
No.
don't say they. So basically, just like it follows the same thing as Anthem, a little bit. The guy finds a relic in the woods or something, and he plays the guitar. He doesn't know anything about it, but once he tunes it and stuff, and Alex is tuning it on the album, he goes out of tune. That's the beauty of the art rock. You hear the discovery where Alex is actually making believe the guy, Getty singing the discovery, Alex is tuning it in between. The guy finds the guitar. Guess he tries to learn how to play it and make some music, and then brings it to the priests who are in the Temple of Syrinx, and they shoot him down.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, we have no need for this in our society. And the way Getty sings it, it's, the dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
It's so mellow when he's like, the guy is telling them, I found this beautiful wonder, and then, Getty gets all angry when the priest come in and, we have our work to do,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So he gets shot down by them, goes home. He's very depressed,
Mm-hmm.
goes into a fitful sleep. I love that lyric. Drifts into a fit. We all need a fitful sleep, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And the oracle. Now this is interesting. I took it as the oracle from the past comes to him in a vision or in a dream, and it's really the oracle. Or did he dream it? But I take it as the oracle came and
Mm-hmm.
says, "The gift you have could make life better, bring happiness, bring enjoyment." And he's very depressed about it.
Yep. Yep.
So, because he knows the past was happy, and kind of like now with modern day technology, I guess.
I,
You know
I
what I
was
mean?
I was gonna say, pause right there. Oh my goodness. In your amazing summary, dude, the themes haunt us today. Like I think you and I share this, and that's why I think you and I relate so much, is that we think about the past and we think, man, today sucks. Like, what happened?
Oh, it does. It
And
does.
we feel like our unnamed protagonist here. And I think, geez, does he kill himself in the
Yeah.
ultimate?
Well, what he does is now the parallel story to this is Rush is singing about themselves.
No,
Rush,
no, no. That's what I'm saying. It triangulates to this autobiography,
yeah,
real life story, middle
hmm
philosophy, and
yeah,
this epic sci-fi event like tale.
yeah,
Like it's
so,
mythic. It's
yeah,
actually pretty insane.
yeah. Rush is the guy who finds the guitar. The record labels are the priests,
Yep.
and basically, unfortunately, in 2112, he does kill himself. So I guess maybe he
Wait,
went
Cheech,
back.
Cheech, pause right there. And 2112 Rush, I remember from the documentary, it was gonna be all or nothing. Like this album was kind of like a suicide album in a way, because that's it. We're gonna pour our hearts in. It
Yep.
doesn't work out. The rock and roll dream is over, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah. And that's what I think you should, that's how everyone should live their life, man. Go
yeah,
for your dream,
yeah,
like
yeah.
don't care, don't let people put you down, just, and Rush, and that's a great example. This is like Vince Lombardi kind of shit,
For sure.
like definitely Rush is like so inspirational for that, for me as a
Yeah.
person, and for you too, So I don't know if he goes back to the priest again and tries, but he ends up killing himself,
Mhm.
and the priests are happy because at the very end, it's one of the greatest endings too
I was
of
gonna
it.
say
You
epic.
know,
Dude, I'm
I,
surprised this has no, dude. Can I say I'm surprised this has not been made into a movie?
It really, you know what? That's a
No,
great idea.
no, because look,
Wait a
Pink
second.
Floyd's The Wall was made into a movie.
We have
Um,
we, we have a friend who makes movies. Just to do a quick shout out.
Go ahead, do
Uh,
it.
Juan Devante, we love you.
Devontae, much love, brother. If you're
Make
and you're an up and coming director,
2112
please.
a movie. You know? Make 2112 a movie. Anyway, he's got to give Devante a shout out. I love him. You
Yeah,
know.
much love to that man.
So yeah, the ending is epic, man. You know, where
Yeah,
it almost sounds like communication breakdown. You know,
yeah,
back
yeah.
down, 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 down,
Oh, I get excited. I will say I was out for a run and I was listening to 2112. When
oh,
the ending
dude,
comes in, dude, my imagination is like, oh, this is so amazing.
like,
It's like the Lord of the Rings ending or Star Wars
yeah.
ending. It's
And
amazing.
then it ends, and it's like, attention, all people of the solar
Yeah. We have
configuration. We
we
have
have
consumed
full
control.
control.
We have consumed control. You know. And
Amazing.
apparently those bastards won.
Yeah.
The priests, they destroyed this guy's dream. So, but I'll just break down so you have I forgot to bring this up. The overture by Tchaikovsky, 1812 overture is quoted in there.
Yep.
How fucking cool is that?
Yep.
They
No,
throw in
it's really
Tchaikovsky.
cool. Yep.
They're throwing in classical music. You know, I remember hearing that, and I'm thinking like, God, I know that. I know that from like Bugs
Yeah.
Bunny or something. You know,
Right.
I
Right.
knew it, but I couldn't figure it out. You know, so I read it in the books when I was a kid.
Right.
So
Right.
you have the overture and the temples, the discovery, the presentation, what we talked about, the dream with the oracle,
Yep.
and then the finale.
Yep.
Which is we covered all that, and it's just that incredible ending, and unfortunately the protagonist kills himself,
Yeah.
and I wonder why Rush didn't make him win.
You know what's funny? Just thinking about that now. I will say so. Yeah, we're gonna hang on to that question because I think that's important because you would think that you would end him with him taking the guitar, using it as a symbol to
Yeah, yeah,
take down the priest, right? The priest of the temple of Syrinx.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But and then I was telling you, the more I was looking into this, I didn't realize he kills himself. So
yeah,
and then a war happens, it's epic, but then it ends on they won the planets of the Solar Federation are
yeah,
back
yeah.
under the control of the elders. So it's a great point, and I will say I think the reason why they did this is usually great artists leave ambiguous endings. They they
Right, right.
they plant ideas. So for example,
Yeah,
like the Who's Next, um great song, right?
yeah,
Yep. And at the end, if anyone's ever listened to that song, highly recommend. They start a revolution and it goes well, but at the
yeah,
end, it's like meet the new boss, same as the old boss, right?
yeah,
So it's kind of like these
yeah.
patterns of history, and I think that's why they ended it a little ambiguous. Like they planted ideas
Hmm.
and they didn't want to, give you a
Or,
happy ending.
or who knows? Maybe they had a sequel coming. Maybe they thought they'll bring him back.
That's a great point. That's a
Or he
great
didn't
point.
himself, or I know there was a couple things that that Rush did reject from Neil. Uh, he did a whole story about Guinevere, like an Excalibur piece, on
Oh,
like, for Farewell to Kings, and Rush was just like they decided it didn't fit that particular album.
right.
So who knows, so
That's a
who
great
knows
point.
what
But
he
but
was.
but I will say the greatest art leaves because you have the hero's journey, right? Like Joseph Campbell talked
Joseph
about
Campbell,
this.
yeah,
The hero's journey, the archetype of the hero. But I think for this one, I am actually glad they did this. Our main protagonist is sort of like a mythic character, so
yeah,
his legend lives on. Even though he kills himself, and he's depressed that the current situation, others will look up to him. So
yeah,
you're right. If they created a sequel, who knows? They would have held his image as a
yeah,
symbol. Like very Orwellian. George
yeah,
Orwell.
yeah. I wonder if they ever thought of that, like maybe doing a sequel to that, through over the years. But they had so many ideas, like they went into Farewell to Kings, which is not really a concept album, but
No.
but like there's like conceptual pieces like Farewell to Kings,
Yep. Yep.
Cinderella Man, uh, and then they have a top 40 hit, Closer to the Heart. That
Yeah.
it boom, that goes on the radio. It's like
Yeah.
always on the radio. Then they went to Hemispheres, which is a heavy duty
Mhm.
concept album.
Psychology
Very,
and philosophy.
very Nietzsche, and
Yeah.
that kind of so but yeah, I think 2112 is the most important Rush album ever. To start off, if you're gonna get into Rush, I recommend 2112.
The perfect album. And again,
Yeah.
I've listened to it like already at this point like 10 times.
Oh
Dude,
God.
dude, it's a perfect album. And if they just released that 2112 suite, man, like they would have been, for the fact they also released like like 4 or 5 other songs that were also amazing in their own right.
Yep.
Um,
And they quote the Bible, which I love.
I was gonna say they quote
And then the meek shall inherit the earth.
the meek shall inherit the earth. What do you think about that? Like, why did they
I,
quote? What do you think?
well, the guitar player's the meek,
Right.
and he shall inherit the earth because he found joy, he found happiness. You
And
know,
that's a reference to like Jesus, blessed are the meek, right?
yeah. I mean, you would probably know that quote better than me. The meaning of meek shall inherit the earth, and that's my interpretation of it. That the person who is being put down or whatever is going to win in the end.
Right.
That's
Very
that.
Jesus like. Dude, I would argue that
Oh
our
yeah,
main protagonist, the priests of the temple of Syrinx are like the Pharisees, right? Like
that
it's great. Dude, the gospels, like he's a Jesus type character. And
this is
the
yeah, this is almost a bit like biblical in a way. I never
biblical
really put
mythic.
it like that.
Dude,
Yeah,
I'm telling you, I was shocked when I was seeing that when I first heard this masterpiece, and they were, yeah, it's a reference to the book of Psalms and Matthew. So I think
I mean, so
crazy.
Neil was all over the place. He's reading
It
the
was all over.
Bible and Ayn Rand, the complete opposite of each other.
Yeah.
Um, stuff. What was this? 1984. Like the sci-fi kind of controlism stuff.
You know what I was gonna say, and he did he read 1984 Cheech? Do you know, like during the making of 2112?
He did. He did. Yeah.
Well, I read that book a few months ago. Man, first of all, highly recommend
Oh
1984.
yeah.
It's so relevant. But when I was re-listening to 2112, I realized that this is an Orwellian masterpiece. Like,
Oh.
if anything, Orwell would have written something similar,
Oh
where
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
our main character, because the main character in 1985, I don't know if you recall, he ends up getting captured by Big Brother and tortured, and it kind of loses at the end.
Yeah. So again, it's that kind of, and this is something just not off topic, but just to bring up Rush on the Starman 2112. This always irked me with the critics. They always put Rush in the satanic panic.
Dude, yeah, what is no, what is up with that? Like, you're right. I never understood that.
Like, because the symbol, and if you could see this, you can see
So
that.
it's a little blurred, but I'll put in the thumbnail. I'll put a picture of it.
Yeah. The Starman hanging
Starman.
over there. It's back there. It's blurred, but the
Yeah.
Starman. It's not a pentagram. I had asked a friend of mine years ago who studied Wicca, and he goes, "No, it's not a pentagram. It's more of like the Jewish star in that degree."
And that's a reference to like the Pharisees.
Exactly.
It's interesting. I never noticed that. You're right.
Not a full pentagram.
No, no,
So it's
no,
not.
no.
So these people who it's a star, basically, Starman. Hello, what am I thinking? It's a
Starman.
star.
Starman.
What am I thinking? So Satanic Panic comes around. For those of you who don't know what that is, in the 80s, uh, there was a lot of bad stuff going on with cults and everything, and like the Geraldo show was out, and Donahue. Ayn Rand was also on Donahue, which is great. I don't know if I've ever said that to you, but
You did.
she put Donahue in his place. But they were blaming Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, King Diamond,
Mhm.
all these bands that may have used occult stuff, you know, okay, blame them. Rush never sang about the occult. They just had a Starman. And the craziest thing that irks me the most, and I learned this from, I'm just going to give a plug to one of my favorite podcasters whose name happens to be Manny. This guy, Manny Grossman, who I think I told you about. Manny Grossman is a podcaster about the Son of Sam, the true
Mhm.
crimes.
Mhm.
And he's done some amazing videos on the Son of Sam cult, Untermeyer Park. And
Mhm.
he brings it up and he said, and I've read it, The Ultimate Evil, the book by Maury Terry, which is a
Mhm.
great book about the whole Son of Sam and the Process Church and all that stuff.
Mhm.
Maury Terry starts bashing Rush, you know, and all these bands, Black Sabbath, all the bands I named, and Rush is a satanic band. It's like, dude, you never listen to Rush just because you
No,
go by.
that's
Don't judge a book by the cover.
no, for sure. And just going back to a Starman symbol, um,
Yeah.
you see a man, that star represents conformity, right? And
Yes.
the Starman like rejecting that, right? Like breaking free.
So the Starman could be our protagonist.
I thought I'm pretty sure it is. 'Cause-
And the Starman makes an appearance in Hemispheres too, with
Yeah,
two brains.
yeah, you're
So
right.
he comes back.
You're right. I think this, yeah, and it's funny, and it's no coincidence that that will end up being their band sign, like their
Oh
symbol.
yeah, it's their, like, I mean, that symbol, it's not quite as popular as like Eddie, but it's their Eddie. You know what I mean? When
Yep.
you see that Rush, when you see Eddie, Eddie took on many different transformations.
Right, right.
Starman stayed where he was, maybe in Hemispheres, naked guy between two brains. I remember seeing that as a kid, going, "What? What the heck? A naked guy, two brains?" But it's, when you think about it, it's the dude from the Starman, the genius of Hugh Sims,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, which is great. So
So, Cheech, we have a minute and a half left, or a minute.
okay,
20 seconds. Like
one
final
minute.
thoughts.
I think 2112 is the greatest concept album ever. I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
Anyone who wants to learn about all the stuff we talked about, philosophy of Ayn Rand, the the musicianship, the story, it has everything, and it has some
Everything.
great songs as well on the other side. So check out 2112, greatest Rush album ever, and Rush, the greatest band. And anything you want to add?
No,
Oh,
100%.
and please, thank you again for watching our podcast.
Mm.
Please like us, subscribe, and please comment. If we missed
Please.
anything about 2112, please let us know.
And
Let
if
us
you
know.
actually go listen to it, comment. We would love to hear your reactions.
Yeah, we want people's opinions. We want to hear everything. I'm always curious to what Alex played. I'm pretty sure he played a Gibson through Marshall. I know Getty used the Rickenbacker, which is phenomenal.
Name is
Great, one of the great.
Rickenbacker.
Yeah. So, and if you're a musician, learn the album. That's what I did. I learned the whole album. I was in a band and we did we did the overture into the Temple of Syrinx. We used to
Wow.
open up a show like that. And it's hard. It's really complex stuff.
Wow.
Challenge. But so